And what judge doesn't love it when people come to them with solutions instead of problems? When they can come in and say, we've talked about this and we've decided to do X, Y, or Z. Can't make the judge's job any easier than that. If you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Now, I'm not saying we're quite that in love with practicing law. It has its moments. But I think in general, we do enjoy what we do and we like what we do, and we want to get better at what we do.
What would you say are some of the trends or industry challenges that are influencing how the firm collaborates?
Well, AI, I would say, is probably the number one thing on that list. We're still learning how to use it. I am probably what I would call a late adopter. It scares me, quite frankly. The legal community in Collier County is small enough that you can pretty much connect with everybody. The way to do that, we find, is through the Bar Association. There's high level of participation from the community. And so you can meet a greater percentage of the legal community through the bar here than I think you can in other locations.
Well, welcome back to the Collier County Bar Association podcast powered by Beyond the Briefcase. Today, we're pleased to welcome Andy Reiss, a senior counsel at Bond Schoeneck King, one of the region's most respected multi-state law firms with a strong presence here in Southwest Florida. Andy represents businesses in complex commercial and civil matters and has been board certified in business litigation by the Florida Bar, which less than 10% of Florida lawyers hold that designation. And that just demonstrates a deep commitment to professional excellence. Beyond his litigation work, Andy has served in leadership roles with the Collier County Bar Association, including as president, helping to shape the local legal community and strengthen the profession in Naples and beyond. Today, we're going to explore how Bond Schoeneck King balances this national strength with local community and strengthens with local engagement, and really just what that means for clients, attorneys, and the broader community. So welcome, Andy.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I'm glad you're able to make it with your busy schedule.
Full disclosure, I was told there would be hair and makeup here today, but there isn't, so this is what you get.
All right. Well, we'll see if we can edit that and apply one of those filters later.
Please do.
So your firm operates across multiple states, yet still find ways to stay connected with communities like ours.
Yes.
And Bond Schoeneck King, to me, stands out in that realm. I see a lot of events where you guys are out in the community doing things together, and I don't see that with a lot of these smaller firms that have national presence.
Yeah, we certainly, I mean, Bond has been here in the Naples market since the 70s, when they sent some folks down here for estate planning clients. And so we've been here a long time. And so we are pretty integrated into the community and take that very seriously.
Well, for those who aren't familiar, how would you describe Bond Schoeneck King's identity and approach as a firm?
Okay, so it's headquartered in Syracuse, and I would say 90% of the attorneys are in the state of New York, mostly upstate New York.
90%?
Yes.
Wow.
We have a few attorneys actually in an Overland Park, Kansas office, which came about because they do work with the NCAA.
I was going to ask if you did work with Sprint, because I think that's where their corporate office was.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know. We have a small office in Boston, and then we have our office here in Florida. But other than that, everybody's in New York, mostly in upstate New York. So it's a real challenge to stay connected with the folks in New York. But the thing I like best about Bond is that they don't make us feel like we're disconnected. They don't make us feel like the forgotten office, in an outpost where, we're forgotten about because we're not seen. They take a lot of steps to integrate us into the whole firm and make sure we feel connected and valued, which is good for us and also good for our clients here.
Yeah. I imagine the lawyers in New York would like to, have you had any that express interest in transferring to Naples after they realize that?
I'm surprised that we don't have more, to be honest, because I certainly would if I were in their shoes. But what we do have is, starting about now and going through February, we seem to have a lot of attorneys who want to visit. And, they're visiting in-laws or family members or what have you, and they use our offices while they're here, which is nice. It's it's good to see people from up north, and uh, hopefully it's a good advertisement for our office when they go back up north and talk about how pleasant it is here.
Yeah, but not too many of them, right? We don't want too many coming down here.
That's right. That's right.
Keep it small, organic growth here in Southwest Florida from the lawyer population. So I moved here in 2015, and I did the research geographically. There was about 1,000 attorneys. I don't know what that number is today, but 10 years later, I imagine it's close to double, at least 150%. But if you look at lawyers per capita to Collier versus Lee County, it's very different. There's just more people there. But I think that's been changing over the last decade, where a lot of these Midwest firms are having offices opened here, firms in New York, things like that. So it sounds like Bond was at the forefront of that move by opening that small office here in the 70s. So that's pretty good insight from the leadership perspective. Well, so how does Bond Schoeneck King balance this large firm capability with a personal client-centered experience?
Well, they give us a lot of autonomy in our local office. So there aren't many things where we have to go and get approval or even consult with the home office or the other offices before we do things. I mean, we operate here much like an independent firm, with the bonus of having the resources of the large firm in Syracuse, the headquarters in Syracuse. So I feel like for our clients here in Collier County, they don't feel like they're dealing with a remote law firm or a law firm that's from somewhere else. They're dealing with a Naples law firm, which is helpful for all of us, I think.
Well, they must be doing a good job, because I didn't realize there was that large of a presence in New York for the firm. I thought there was already a significant presence here. So it shows that a lot of work has gone into making that happen.
Yeah, I think we have close to 300 attorneys total now, and we have about 12 here in Naples, and so that's why I said 90% are there in the state of New York.
Yeah.
Buffalo, Rochester, Manhattan, Long Island, Albany, those types of places. So we are spread out pretty far and wide, and it's tough to keep in touch with folks from upstate New York on a consistent basis, but it's certainly a priority for us.
Well, it's hard enough to keep in touch with the 12 that are here.
That's right. That's right. Especially with people now working remotely and coming and going. Unfortunately, we've had a couple of departures, but we've also had some additions recently, and so
I know
trying to keep the team together.
So how does the firm maintain cultural consistency across multiple offices?
We have regular meetings by Zoom, which is funny because when I started with the firm in January of 2020, I'd never heard of Zoom. And
many people didn't.
Within 2 months, everything was on Zoom, firm-wise and also litigation-wise. And so they've taken good opportunity of that, taken advantage of that technology to keep everybody connected. We have litigation department meetings, we have partner meetings, we have firm-wide meetings, and everybody is able to stay on the same page culturally. Yeah. And some of the folks in our office have been in the New York offices before they came down here.
Okay.
So they bring with them the culture. And then we just try to maintain the consistency here with everybody to perpetuate that culture. We reinforce it every year through our training and also our evaluations. So that's how we approach that.
That's easier said than done, but it sounds like you got the right idea. Everybody has a different idea of what culture is, what it looks like. Someone once told me years ago, if you have more than 2 employees, then you have a culture. And if you don't set it, it'll happen on its own organically. So it's really important to keep tabs on what you want that culture to be.
Also, I think the Naples culture fits in with the overall Bond culture. If we had a large firm from, say, I don't know, Dallas or Boston or something like that, I'm not sure that kind of big city culture would adapt to well here in Naples. And I know there have been some firms who've tried that,
Mm-hmm.
and some have succeeded, and some haven't.
Right.
But the Syracuse culture for Bond, I think, is a good match for the culture here in Naples, and we can make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, let's bring that into the practical side of collaboration across multiple offices. How does Bond Schoeneck King coordinate work across its various offices and practice groups?
We have 4 departments here in Naples: litigation, real estate, trust and estates, and business.
Okay.
And we are each tied in closely with the departments in the other offices. We collaborate with them. We trade work back and forth. So we do work for folks from New York. They do work for folks from Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And we have so many different areas of expertise throughout the firm that there's always somebody who can do what you need done. So if I have a bankruptcy question, I know there are folks in New York who specialize in that: labor and employment and government work, educational work, anything that comes up. I know there's somebody who can answer the question.
Yeah, that's helpful.
And so that's very helpful to us. But we keep in touch and keep connected by working together on as many things as we can. There are a number of cases I have here where I bring in somebody from New York to support it, who has a niche in that particular case, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and they can help us out. And they can also help us out. It's nice to have people to back up if we're having a time crunch or a shortage here in Naples, which happens from time to time. Since we only have 12 people,
Mm-hmm.
12 attorneys, sometimes there are times when we're stretched to our limits, and we know we can get administrative support or technical support or whatever from the other offices. And so that keeps us together because we are in that communication consistently. And then the folks come down here to visit us, and mostly in the winter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And, the managing partner of the firm is here at least 2 or 3 times a year, and tries to meet with pretty much everybody. And
That's important.
yeah, gets ideas from everyone and consults with everyone.
That's good.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of the trends or industry challenges that are influencing how the firm collaborates?
Well, AI, I would say, is probably the number one thing on that list. We're still learning how to use it. I am probably what I would call a late adopter of AI as
Okay.
opposed to an early adopter.
Better late than never.
Yeah, well, it scares me, quite frankly. When you see the things that can go wrong with AI, unless you really know what you're doing and are paying attention. I'm nervous about using it. But we're committed to implementing it throughout the firm. We have AI programs now. We're testing other AI programs as we speak, and we have the support from the home office to get the tools we need and use them.
Mm-hmm.
And the AI is very collaborative in our firm because people can work together on documents remotely and have conversations remotely using the AI tools that we have. And they're working very hard to implement that. I think that's the biggest trend on the horizon is implementing AI and making it work. And
Yeah,
hopefully I'll be more comfortable with it as we go along here. And
I think you will. And once you have seen how to test and tune the AI support that you use, whatever that program may be, I've been using AI for about 3 years, and I started using ChatGPT about 2.5 years ago, and then I didn't touch it for months. Right. And then I realized how powerful it was as it continued to advance their algorithms and their different systems. And now you have so many different providers that it's hard to determine which is
Yeah.
best for you and how they differ.
yeah,
So it's good. The idea is, as long as you're testing and tuning, even if you are personally a late adopter, there's somebody at your firm that's an early adopter.
right.
And
A lot of them,
and you probably have them
usually the
driving-
younger ones.
Yeah. Well, we're maybe more prone to taking risks than someone who has already seen how risk can be detrimental to whatever whether, especially when you go to court. We had Rich Treiser on here recently, and he talked about using AI in the courtroom and how the hallucination of case law One of the cases he was in, there was a couple cases in a memorandum or something that didn't even exist.
Right.
So if
You
I were
see
at
that a
court,
lot now.
that would scare the heck out of me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I mean, that scared the heck out of me enough. But then I read about a federal judge who somehow issued an order from his office that had hallucinated information in it as well. And, he, of course, blamed it on his
Law clerk.
law clerks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, of
so,
course.
Well, you got to do. But, the same rule that applies to the attorneys, you're responsible for what you sign,
That's
applies to the judges. So I'm not sure
good
how
for
that
the
gets them
appellate
off
lawyers.
the hook. Yeah. But if even judges' offices are having difficulty using it correctly and keeping it from hallucinating and that getting out, then that makes me nervous for sure.
Yeah.
It's
Well, look, we have to stay on top of the changes in the law, right? And you can use AI to help you interpret things. Like, who wants to read a 100-page bill, for example, or all the comments, so you can process large amounts of data faster. And never mind e-discovery, it'll sift through boxes of papers much quicker than any person could. So I see that as being a benefit to the clients, where they're not having to pay for as much time, but you still have to put time in doing different things. For example, fact checking, right? And that's where I think the lawyer is needed.
exactly.
It's
Yeah.
not going to replace the lawyer anytime soon, hopefully never, for certain practice types, especially a court-based practice. Well, what would you say are some of the challenges that multi-office firms face that the clients may not see?
Keeping consistent communication, having things that are done in other offices that cause problems for us here. For instance, the billing is centralized in New York, but if something goes wrong with it, that falls on us. We have to deal with it face to face with the client to get it fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there can be delays and also miscommunications in how we want that fixed and how it does get fixed. So it would be easier if our billing person was right down the hall from us and we could walk into their office anytime and say, hey, I want you to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's challenging. But the benefit of the support system we have in other locations outweighs the detriments, the issues that we might run into. So, but also, if we have clients in New York who work regularly with an attorney there,
Mm-hmm.
and they have an issue come up in Florida, and they bring us in to handle a litigation matter, let's say, we have to make them comfortable enough to see us as the main contact and the person they can trust, the person they can rely upon, rather than calling the New York attorney, because that causes problems too, because it slows things down.
Yep.
And now you're almost kind of playing a game of telephone, where the client calls the attorney in New York and the attorney in New York calls us and tells us what the issue is, and maybe they get it right, maybe there's a little misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So we have to make the folks in other locations comfortable dealing directly with us and not having to worry about going through the New York attorney. And so that's a challenge of dealing with multiple offices.
I can relate with that. Even though I have a small firm, when we deal with lawyers who referred the client to us in their home state, and the lawyer is the point of contact in, say, half of those engagements, we have that same dynamic where they already have a good, long-standing rapport with that client. Maybe it's in Chicago, maybe it's in New York. Those are some of the two most frequent states where they still have counsel. And it's all about setting the expectations. So if the lawyer in the other state sets good expectations and you mirror that consistently with your communication, then I think they'll warm up faster. But if you don't have that conversation, then it's like a coin toss, right? It may work out great, or they may keep going back to that other lawyer that referred them down here to begin with.
And with remote clients, I think it's even more imperative that you have to keep up that extreme level of communication, because they already are probably a little, not suspicious, but uneasy. That's a good word. Now I have this lawyer who I've never met before in Florida. They tell me he's good. I don't know. I don't have anything to base that on.
Yeah.
And so if you start off slowly and don't have that communication, they're not going to get that comfort level with you that they need in order for you to work for them effectively.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah.
How does the Naples office contribute to the broader mission and culture of Bond Schoeneck King?
I think we bring a little bit different perspective than some of the other offices. You know, everybody's in their bubble, right? And so the folks in upstate New York, that's a different bubble than how we do things here. And quite frankly, the folks in New York are often surprised about the way things are done here, both in the court system, but also in just the general community. You know, the folks in New York, they tend to represent larger clients, manufacturers, larger companies that don't necessarily exist in Collier County. And so they're used to operating like that. We in Naples tend to have more clients that are smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to do things a little bit differently. So
You're dealing with the owner directly instead of his legal team.
right, exactly. And we're not dealing with companies that have, 1,000 employees
Okay.
or what have you. We're dealing with smaller construction companies or real estate agencies or small manufacturers or things like that. And that's different. That's very different. And like you said, the most significant difference is you're dealing directly with the upper management, the guy who owns the business.
Yeah.
There may only be one.
Well, I imagine that dealing with the courts is very different here too. So you have that dynamic. The calendars are probably more full. Things take longer up there.
I'm not sure about that, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes people will say they think we're taking too long compared to New York, and sometimes it's not a problem. Yeah.
Okay. So it's real relative to the judge's docket in any given court then.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But they are surprised at the way we do some of the things differently here. It's not so much in the state system, not so much on paper, but we have, face-to-face hearings and things like that, which they don't tend to do quite as much. They tend to model a federal system a little bit more.
Everything's in writing.
Most things are decided on the papers, that kind of stuff. So they are a little surprised sometimes at that. I think we tend to be a little bit more informal, but I think that's a Collier County thing rather than a Florida thing. The Collier County has always been a place where attorneys are able to deal with each other a little more informally because there's that level of cooperation and trust, and we know each other really well. And
Yeah.
so I'm not sure you'd even find that, in Miami or Tampa. So I don't think it's a Florida thing.
Well, when you made the reference of New York and Naples, I was immediately thinking Miami because it's a whole nother world just down the street than it is here.
That's right.
So I agree with you. Collier County is unique. I've only practiced in one other community, but we do real estate transactions about 25 communities across the state, and we've done probates in a dozen counties. And it is very different no matter where you are. You can see the differences with how decisions are made, whether the clerk of the probate court contacts you or the judge's assistant, for instance. So, and the judge isn't going to call you, but you're not shunned for contacting the judge's assistant. Whereas in other counties, everything must be filed. You didn't read the instructions. That's on you. Too bad.
Yeah.
So speaking of community, though, the bar plays a big part in connecting us.
I agree. And our firm agrees.
And so that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have this podcast, and the Collier County Bar's director, Lisa, wanted this, is to really shine light on that. Because if you don't go to these events and you're not regularly participating in bar events, you don't necessarily see the benefit. We talked about community involvement with Laird Lyle. We talked about it with Steve Blunt, and now we're talking about it here. And so it's just getting that momentum for especially these younger lawyers, because the ones that have been here since the 70s, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, they've already seen it before Collier County took off population-wise. I think when I moved here, someone told me there was about 370,000 residents, 160,000 of which were seasonal.
Right.
Or maybe it was the opposite, but whatever it was close to 50-50. And now it's different. 10 years later, you have a bunch of people stayed here after COVID, and they've made Collier County their home. and they start to bring the practices from their home state to this area, and they see what works, what doesn't, and they realize that it's not changing just because they're here. And that's one thing I like about the community.
Yeah, and the change has been unbelievable. I've been here a little bit longer than you. I think I got here in 97,
Okay.
which isn't that long ago, but the change is amazing because, I mean, when we first got here, the summers around here, there were a lot of restaurants that just shut down for the summer and the owners went somewhere else.
I think they still did that even a couple years ago.
Yeah.
There's some that universally have done that, but COVID really changed that.
Yeah, and
Post-COVID.
And now if somebody told me, "Oh, this restaurant closes between June and the end of September," I'd say, "Really? Yeah, that's a big surprise." But that kind of was the norm here
Mm-hmm.
back then. And there were good things about it that, I wish we had back, but there are good things about the community becoming more diverse, becoming younger, expanding in terms of opportunities, and it's a much different place in just those 28 years that I've been here. And for the folks that have been here long before that,
Yeah.
they can certainly tell you some stories, I'm sure.
Yeah. I've already heard a few, mostly good. What value does the bar provide to firms like yours?
I think the biggest value that it provides to our firm is keeping us connected with everybody else in our community. The legal community in Collier County is small enough that you can pretty much connect with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way to do that, we find, is through the Bar Association, because there's a high level of participation from the community. I don't know what the percentage of involvement might be in like Broward County. Okay.
Right.
But I have a feeling our percentage is much higher. And so you can meet a greater percentage of the legal community through the bar here than I think you can in other locations. That's getting more and more difficult because we are getting bigger and bigger. When I didn't do Inns of Court for a little while, and when I went back, I didn't recognize 3/4 of the people in the room.
Yeah, you
because
look
now
at that
I'm
as
one of the old guys.
right?
Yeah.
And I've done Inns of Court 2 or 3 times over the last several years, and I experienced that same thing. 'Cause my first year in town, I participated as a transactional lawyer where I would meet lawyers that do things that I don't and get to know some of the judges. And then 3 years later, I came back, and it was a very similar experience. But that's interesting to hear someone like yourself who is involved to say that. That shows there's even a larger growth in organizations like that. But
Yeah.
it's also positive for the bar that there's more engagement. I imagine at some point you'll see consistent growth and returning lawyers. So the
Yeah.
inns will just get larger. I don't know if that warrants opening a second Inns of Court. I know some counties have more than one Inns of Court, kind of like a BNI chapter, right? Where you have all these people interested, but to have them all under one roof for one program, it's administratively impossible.
Yeah. When I was I don't know what they call it, the president of the local Inns of Court chapter, it was basically anybody who wants to participate, come on in. We're glad to have you.
Yeah.
And that was difficult because we got a little too big for a year or two. And I know a lot of other inn chapters in other locations are, they have to be selective. You have to apply and you have to be selected to participate that year. We haven't had to do that here yet, I don't think. And I hope we don't ever have to, but we probably will.
Yeah. I sensed it last year. I started the Inns of Court and then realized I had too many conflicts on the meeting dates and our group presentation day. So I had to resign that year and realize that they should have vetted me better. Right? So
Yeah.
I didn't vet myself enough, and it ended up being one less member of the group that they chose me to be in. And I'm sure that happens every year.
Oh, I know it does because I've been one of those people too.
Yeah, but then you also have the off hours that you're supposed to meet for your presentation, and the participation is like 70%. And then someone wants to say, hey, can I do Zoom? I'll be there, but it's just not quite the same.
Yeah.
Being in the same room with them for those presentations. And that's where the real bonds are made.
And you're right. We have to keep the, for lack of a better word, pipeline of newer attorneys coming into the Inns of Court, coming into the Bar Association, because if that stops, then that connectivity with the other members of the legal community here will end, and that's not good. I think that's part of the problem with other communities where people complain about, oh, there's no civility, there's no, decorum, etc. That's because people don't know each other as well, and they're not, accountable to each other as much as they are here.
Yeah.
Odds are every time I go to the grocery store, I'm going to run into an attorney here in Naples that I know and have worked with. And so when you see those people all the time, it reminds you that we are an integrated legal community here that needs to work together, even in, litigious situations. But at the end of the day, people are paying attention. People are watching you. People do notice what you do and what you say and whether you do what you say. And I hope we don't ever lose that. It's probably inevitable as we get bigger to lose it somewhat.
Yeah. But as long as the leadership at the bar is mindful of that, and you have some of those less connected lawyers who are new to the community that actually get involved, I think that's what keeps the momentum. And we'll need lawyers like yourself to stay involved, because the younger lawyers not only need mentorship and leadership, they need someone to set that example. And the people that have only been here in the last 10 years compared to 20 or even 30, they need someone to continually model that behavior.
Crucial. Yeah. You mentioned Rich Treiser before, and he gave me my first job here in Naples.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And he encouraged me to get involved in Inns of Court right away. And the first team leader that I had for Inns of Court was Mike McDonnell, who was here forever. And we definitely need people like Mike McDonnell to be there to work with the next generations.
Well, we need guys like Andy Reiss too. So you're up.
Well,
man.
now I'm in that generation, unfortunately.
Well, how important is collegiality within our community?
Well, to me, it's crucial. And partly that has to do, I think, with my personality. I tend to be a conflict avoider, which is probably not a great trait for a litigation attorney.
Well, it is for the clients if you're going to mediation and settling.
Yeah. But so I need that collegiality because it helps me do my job effectively. I don't have to spend a lot of time fighting with people, not a lot of time worrying about whether they're trying to pull one over on me or something like that. And, I just in general find that you can accomplish a lot more here with, as they say, with honey than you can with vinegar. And here we have a lot of honey, and that works for me.
Yeah.
And I think it works for everybody.
Do you find that the lawyers that come from out of state, we'll just use New York as an example, not necessarily from Bond Schoeneck King, but they will somehow end up tarnishing things and then either drive themselves out or end up, lawyer comes from New York, you have a longstanding collegiate member of the Collier County Bar saying that's not how we do things here. Are the ones coming from out of state learning how to adapt?
I think so. I haven't really noticed a lot of people coming into our community and being a problem.
Okay.
First of all, I think people who come here from somewhere else have probably done a little bit of research into how things work here.
The Florida Bar, I think, does a good job at just passing the exam. That's part of it. And then all the stuff that goes out, the literature and stuff that goes out, as long as they read it.
And, I doubt that they like ever being told, that's not the way we do things here. So that probably doesn't happen as much as just attorneys here modeling the way we like to practice, and judges making clear that this is how we're going to do things. We're not going to do it in a discourteous or unprofessional manner. Sending that message from the judges alone is very powerful. Very, very powerful, because people will understand quickly that if you take a different approach that you might find in, Los Angeles or Chicago or something like that, it's probably not going to get you real far here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we talked with Steve extensively about his mediation practice. And one of the themes that came up is how it's not good to hide the ball. But another thing that we talked about was letting the judge decide. If you don't figure things out in mediation, then you end up in front of the judge. And I understand it's inevitable with some cases that you have to go before a judge and a jury, right? We're not talking about those cases. But when you have the choice and the opportunity to settle something, that collegiality plays a big role in getting to a resolution faster versus someone who stakes an adversarial stance right out of the gates, ends up doing their client a disservice, and then they have no idea what to expect when that case goes in front of the judge because they don't know the judge.
Yeah, yeah. And what judge doesn't love it when people come to them with solutions instead of problems, you know?
Well,
when they come in and say, we've talked about this and we've decided to do X, Y, or Z. Can't make the judge's job any easier than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've been to court a number of times over the years as part of my practice, just as an ancillary service. And I realized that if you don't have that understanding of how the judge works, in other words, you don't want to lay it up on, if you don't know lay it up on a platter, as long as it's within the bounds of the law, you're making it easier for them versus the traditional mindset of, well, let's let the judge decide.
Right, right.
Right. No, if you decide and then let the judge rule, then you're more likely to come to a good, mutually agreeable judgment or order.
Yeah. Well, and when I worked with Ed Cheffy for a long time, one of his philosophies was things go better when the lawyers can be in charge of the case and we can leave the judge out of it as much as necessary because we can do this on our own and we don't have to bring everything to the judge. Now that's changing a little bit with the more intense case management and some of the new rules, but I think it still applies. I think, if you allow the attorneys to handle the case as much as possible, it'll lighten the workload for the judges, which is great, and it'll speed things up because you don't have to wait around for hearings and things like that. So, and sometimes you'll hear attorneys talk about how they got hometown in Naples. Oh, I got hometown. It's a little place. Yeah, they all stick up for each other. It's not really being hometown. It's if I've appeared in front of a judge here in Collier County 100 times, and they know who I am, they know the way I do things, they know that if I tell them something, it's true or accurate, you're going to get a friendly reception. It's not that they like me better or they're like, oh, you're from Collier County, I'm going to rule in your favor. It's that we do have that collegiality. We do have that smaller community where we have experience with each other and can, maybe let down our guard a little bit with each other instead of, walking in and immediately being, on edge about an attorney who's going to try to stick it to you.
Well, I think that's important for the newer, or more important for the newer lawyers to come to the Inns of Court and participate in the events that the judges show up to.
Yeah.
Not only will they get to see your face, you'll get to see theirs and hear their opinions because the judges present a segment at every Inns of Court meeting, and they always acknowledge them at the big bar luncheons and such. So.
Yeah, we have fantastic participation by judges in our legal community activities, whether it's Inns of Court or Collier County Bar events or anything like that. The list, when they start out all the events, reading the list of the judges who are in attendance, every year it gets longer because we have more and more participation. Now we have more and more judges too, but
yeah, I like it when they say hold your clapping till the end.
That's what we have to do now because we have so many judges.
I remember my first 5 or 6 years, every year we would clap after every judge, and it was like we'd be clapping for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know, and now, like you said, we have to say just hold off and we'll get to you.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, so as we wrap up here, we end every episode with a few broader reflections. So I have a question for you. What keeps you and the firm passionate about the work that you do?
Well, I think the main thing is that we like what we do. You know what they say, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Now, I'm not saying we're quite that in love with practicing law. It
Right.
has its moments.
Right.
But I think in general, we do enjoy what we do and we like what we do, and we want to get better at what we do, even, as we get a little bit older. And so we do want to keep that commitment to the community, keep the commitment to our clients, and, continue to develop our community into something that we want it to be. And what does it for me is really the wide range of issues and things that we get to deal with as litigators.
Mm-hmm.
Every case is different,
Yeah.
whether it's an employment case or a real estate case or, a construction case. We're always learning new things. We have to learn a new subject matter for almost every case we get, Like this case, I have to understand roofing, In this case, I have to understand how our clients' procedures work in terms of their employees and how they get along and how they, that sort of thing. And that makes it interesting for me because every time a new case comes in the door, it's like, oh, what's this one going to be about, and what am I going to get to learn this time? And that keeps me engaged. And I think it's that way for most attorneys because you don't find the same case or matter over and over again.
And when you do have those moments, you're like, all right, I got this. Been there, done that. And then there's also a benefit that drives your passion in that because you get to revisit something with even more experience and having seen it come full circle, which is going to add value to the relationship that and the service you provide to your client.
Right.
In that situation.
But I just love learning in general. And so that's the way I incorporate the love of learning into my practices, that every case requires me to learn something new, which is great.
That's good stuff. Well, what guidance does Bond Schoeneck King emphasize for attorneys who are developing their careers?
I joined the firm when I'd already been practicing probably about 23 years, something like that. So I can't say from personal experience how they help developing attorneys from that direction, but we have added some new young attorneys over the last 3 or 4 years. And so I get to see it now, and I also have some responsibility for it now. And so I can certainly talk about it from that direction. And the primary things we focus on is, first of all, getting them connected, keeping them connected with the local office as well as the folks up north.
Okay.
The new attorneys take frequent trips to Syracuse for associate events and things like that. And they have better connections with all the attorneys up in New York than I do because they get together frequently. So that helps. They have colleagues that they can rely upon and commiserate with and that kind of thing. But also a mentor is assigned to everybody in their local office. And because we're small enough in the Naples office, that mentorship means something because we do have frequent contact and development. And then we have, a good annual evaluation program to make sure we're staying on top of things. So from both directions.
Yeah, well, I'm hearing good support, mentorship, which the big bar, Florida bar, and the local bar have tried to implement over the last several years. Has been a big initiative to have mentorship. And I talked to Laird Lyle about the fellowship program that he started years ago that has turned into the National Bar Association now has mentorship programs similar to like a fellowship. And I see that continue to evolve, but we get stuck in our own heads. And if you don't have that, at least one person that's been there, done that, that's going to show you the ropes or you can bounce questions off, you're doing yourself a disservice. So that's good that the firm offers that. And it's mandatory and it's ingrained into the process for the development.
And I think that can get lost sometimes in a local office of a larger firm because it can be easy for the folks in another location to kind of slip out of their mind.
Yeah.
But because we focus on it both locally and firm-wide, I think we're able to maintain that
Yeah,
that
it's easier said than done.
connection.
You have to be intentional about it, and it sounds like the firm is, so that's good.
Yeah.
Well, what does legacy mean for a firm with deep regional roots and a growing Florida presence?
Oh, I'm not sure I know what legacy means in that
Well,
context, but
we talked about legacy on each one of these episodes, and everybody's got a different idea of what that word means. So you don't have to get it right per se, but think of it as the footprint that's left behind when you're gone.
yeah, and unfortunately, I'm starting to get to that age where I have to start thinking about that. Um, and I would say that what we want our legacy to be here in Naples is that we're not any type of, I guess, what you would call carpetbagger, who comes in from out of state, tries to make some money here,
Mm-hmm.
but not really committed to the community. We want to make sure that the bond office here in Naples is a Naples office. So not you're a Naples office of a Syracuse firm. You are a Naples law firm, essentially. And you deal with things here directly and substantively and on a granular level. And so that's certainly what I would want the legacy of our office to be, is that we continue to have Naples attorneys basically in a Naples law firm, although we are affiliated with offices in other locations.
Well, you did a really good job answering that, in my opinion. So kudos to you on bringing that home. Um, well, to find the firm, you just Google Bond Schoeneck King. We could spell that out, but they go by the initials BSK as well. You'll see that commonly. You can find more about Andy online as well. And we want to appreciate the firm's sponsorship and community involvement of the Collier County Bar, setting a really good example for other firms in town. And we invite our subscribers or we invite you to subscribe to this podcast so you can hear more stories like this and from more lawyers in the community who are giving back. So thanks again for joining the Collier County Bar Association podcast powered by Beyond the Briefcase. And until next time, we'll see you then. Thanks again, Andy.
Thank you.